Must say I love this band. Like to give them another hand. And thank you, Reverend Newsom. I know you just go by Newsom here, but I'm going to call you Reverend Newsom. Thank you for having me. And thank you, Unity of the Triangle. It's good to be back. It's been 7 years, right? It's been a while. So grateful to return to see you all again. I've been tasked with the wonderful opportunity to talk about Black history and oneness. Black history and oneness. Now, quick story. When I was growing up, I grew up in a predominantly Anglo-Saxon, white, whatever you want to call it, environment at a Christian private school growing up. Enjoyed it, actually. I had a great education, and then I left for a couple of years and went to an all predominantly black public school in Chattanooga, Tennessee, is where I grew up, by the way. And there was a nice contrast there. I got to see culturally different things. Of course, I grew up in a black home, so it wasn't that foreign, right? But the education was a little different. Private school versus the public black school. The black school was right there in the projects. If you know what the projects are, they're like this, I guess it's supposed to be affordable housing that the government created. But long story short, there was a lot of violence, drugs, and other things happening in that environment. And I got to see it firsthand. And believe it or not, it was such a beautiful eye-opener culturally to be in that environment and to see what was going on. That was where I learned about civil rights for the first time. I didn't learn it at the private Christian school. For whatever reason, they weren't teaching that. But once I got to this wonderful public school, we learned about the civil rights movement, and it was the eye-opener that helped me realize I had taken for granted this private education that I had. It was really a shocker to see that people had given up their lives to be able to do and experience what I had experienced, integration in a predominantly white school, that people had been beaten, spit on, and mocked and called names and demonized for trying to do what I was given freely, right? So it was such an eye-opener that it gave me an appreciation for the past education, but then for the current education I was receiving. Became a great student all of a sudden. It lit a fire in me, let's just say. And then I ended up with a scholarship back to the school I had left, and left that school, went to West Point Military Academy, transferred to one of my heroes' colleges, Morehouse College in Atlanta. So my sophomore year I spent at Morehouse, getting a chance to experience what one civil rights leader had already gone through. He graduated in 1948. And so I'm on the very campus that MLK, my hero, had cut his chops at, let's just say. And it was such a wonderful opportunity, but I didn't get it. I didn't get it. I lost my scholarship at that wonderful opportunity. I had a full ride and just squandered it, partying, having a good time. I didn't get it. I didn't understand what I was receiving at that time. And so, long story short, lived my life chasing different goals, had wonderful things unfold, as many of us have, trying to figure it out along the way. And thankfully, I remember saying this one prayer, show me what works. By the time I was in my 20s, I realized nothing I tried worked. Show me what works. And things came along. I got introduced to meditation, got introduced to presence, breathing, stillness. And I found what worked for me. And what I realized was all my life, including in that private school, the public school, military academy, Morehouse, all those places, I had good times, bad times, etc. But what I didn't have were the tools to help me find a way to navigate and accept whatever arises. To feel like I belong in whatever moment I find myself. Thankfully, I found those tools. And I'm going to give them to you today. No. The truth is, you've got to find the tools that work for you. I can share mine with you, but that's just like you trying my shoes on. Doesn't mean it's going to work. The reality is, you've got to find the practices that work for you to help you align with whatever that power is that assists us in belonging in this now moment. It's that power that helps us transcend the story. The power that helps us understand and see the perfection of now. On the drive here, as my wife will tell you, we were kind of silent. Often when I have a talk or we're hosting a retreat, we host retreats around the world, workshops, you name it. The energy that I experience right beforehand is always pretty heavy. I don't know why that is. It's just happens every time, just about. Maybe we'll change that. But what I've learned to do is accept it and recognize it's perfect and that I'm acclimating. I'm aligning, I'm being present with and acclimating with whatever is unfolding so that I'm prepared to enter spaces where others may be at different frequencies, right? What it teaches me and what I'm grateful for understanding is that whatever unfolds in our lives, not only is it for us, but it's the perfect ingredients to help us understand that we belong. It's the perfect ingredients to help us be the very light that allows others to understand that they belong. How many of you woke up this morning and just felt like you were on cloud 9? I did not. I did not. And what I've learned is that is part of the wonderful unfolding, that if we can learn to navigate, we become these amazing surfers of life versus the people drowning in life, right? Trying to catch our breath. But how do we do it? Through that practice, that alignment, whatever practices that work for us to assist us in aligning with that source that knows and sees the waves that are coming are for us, that knows how to intuitively navigate them, float on them, transcend them, walk on them. That's the power that I'm most grateful for. And that when I find myself waking up and feeling like, why do I feel this way? I use my practices to align and realize, oh, this is for me. I belong. So, Black history and oneness, how does that connect? This talk is about shifting collective wounds. When we say shifting, we mean moving from investing belief in the consciousness that believes the wounds are real to a higher level of consciousness that knows it's just a design, a coding, a perfect design working for us despite the appearances. For example, we know the truth of our existence based on not only principle, but scientific observation and presence, is that our reality is influenced by consciousness. I found this wonderful article online called, "Is Human Consciousness Creating Reality?" It begins, is there physical reality that is independent of us? Or does objective reality exist at all? Or is the structure of everything, including time and space, created by the perceptions of those observing it? Such is the groundbreaking assertion of a new paper published by the Journal of Cosmology and Astroparticle Physics by Robert Lanza, who views space and time as a byproduct of the whirl of information in our head that is weaved together by our mind into a coherent experience. Now that's science observations, right? I won't even try to say that journal again. It's like, oh, that sounds like a heavy journal. But this is someone's observation essentially saying that the quality of our thinking in our minds creates the quality of our experience. That's essentially what I heard in my own meditation, that the quality of my thought informs the quality of my experience. And when the quality of my experience feels like it did this morning, I recognize it's time to tap into a higher quality thought. Tap into something to shift the experience, right? So what I found is that all consciousness is our consciousness. And all consciousness creates these experiences because the one source that all consciousness emerges from is seeking to experience more. The very first principle I ever heard was, life is seeking to experience more. Now, there is oneness, but there is appearance of more because why? Life is seeking to experience more, right? So, when reflecting on Black history in the U.S. and oneness, the title of this talk I inquired about, what consciousness creates suffering, violence, oppression, and the like? Well, it's the consciousness of separation, what some call ego or egoic thinking. I like to call it limited condition thinking. The conditioned thinking that believes it is separate from the whole, and therefore it senses a fundamental lack because it believes it's not one with perfection, not one with divine power and somehow fallen. And so it seeks to acquire what it believes it lacks, right? This is a coding in consciousness, or a limited condition thinking. It creates this perpetual cycle of suffering. Now, this is what strikes me as interesting. We know in spiritual principle there's only oneness. We can look at our own lives and see a history and find these traumas that have us acting out of suffering, right? When we look at our own past. If you look at things that might have happened when you were young and you wonder why you're acting a certain way. Why am I acting like this? Why am I waking up feeling like this? What is causing this? Often it's these conditioned, limited ways of thinking, traumas, and the like. That's why we have therapy. That's why we have meditation. That's why we have the practices we have to release them. What's interesting is the greatest trauma is our belief that we are separate from the oneness. Our greatest trauma is our belief that we are separate from each other, that we're not all one. So when we look at the history of our human family, what we call Black history is our history. You ever been around somebody who, I actually had this happen, been around somebody who feels like, I'm not qualified to talk about that topic because I'm not Black, right? Guess what? Surprise. You're qualified. It's not only my history, it's your history. When we look at spiritual principle, the reality is It's that identification of separation that leads to the misperception and suffering. And it's our fears that keep us in a cycle of fighting battles that don't need to be fought. Why did I say that? Fighting battles that don't need to be fought. When we believe we are this limited, conditioned perception based on the coding that wants the more to feel real, what often happens is anything that threatens or that we perceive as a threat, we fight against. Well, what could we perceive as a threat? Perhaps something that's different, something we don't understand, something that's outside of us that isn't familiar, something that might hold a completely different belief that makes us somehow feel like we want to protect our beliefs and don't want to be challenged as, quote, wrong. Right? Look at politics. Easy. That's an easy three-pointer right there. Religion, plenty there. It's that false sense of identification that we have an attachment to and we thus invest belief in. It's just a level of consciousness and coding that feels real, different. Oh, I'm 5'8", and I have hazel eyes, and I'm light complexion. You're 7'3", and you have whatever, right? And, oh, wow, you're so different and tall, and I'm smaller, and I feel inferior, right? It's the coding we're identifying with. And the differences that create this amazing virtual reality. The challenge is when we start to feel the suffering, when we actually get present with the suffering, and we're like, wait a minute, I got to find something that works. This virtual reality sucks. Can somebody reset the game, please? If you're fortunate like me, you can call out to the great power and say, help. Show me something that works, because this is not working for me. And then you find those practices and you begin to up-level. Instead of staying in the code or the app that says, I identify as this person, this body, this personality, and this story, this history, you close that app out, being guided by the great programmer, opening up a brand new app that says, ta-da, welcome, you have found a practice that aligns you with the source of the code. Ta-da! We're going to upgrade and install this wonderful new awareness of your own presence and power to recognize that you are interconnected with all things. Ta-da! You are an extension of the I Am itself, the very power that created the app, created the phone, and is holding and observing the phone in this moment. Ta-da! It's time to upgrade even further and listen for the vision of your life, why you're here, what you're here to do. You're like, oh, that's great. Nice app. Cool. And it changes the nature of the virtual reality. Now you have discovered you actually have the latest phone with all the wonderful things you need to navigate this virtual reality. And all this time, it's been there. You just didn't know what you were doing. You ever receive new technology and you're like, oh, how do you use this thing? Right? It's like, Newsom, you know how to use this? Let's meet on Sunday morning. And you get some tips and you figure it out. If you can move from the attachment, let's just call it, of that identification app, if you can let go of the attachment and close it through really beckoning what you really are, that higher power, you can call out to that and ask for that assistance. It can begin to expand your awareness so you can stop seeing through that app, that limited conditioned thinking that has only a certain level of coding. Next thing you know, let me just back up. Is it comfortable? No. It is not comfortable letting go. So I don't want you to get the misperception that letting go of this identification is easy. It's a death. People talk about the dying of the ego. It feels like a death because that coding says, no, I am real. Don't close me. We don't know what's on the other side if you close this down. This is all we know. I'm so used to being this way. This is who I am. How does it feel? Oh, it sucks. Are you willing to feel something else? Yes. Are you willing to try to close the app? Okay. I've been in that situation recently, actually, with my wife. I don't even remember the conversation, but there was something that came up where she had a way of doing something, I had a way of doing something, and she had invited me to be a part of her way of doing it. And I was like, I kind of see a different direction of how to do that. Why don't you handle that yourself is what I was feeling. And as I was feeling that, I was like, that don't feel good. And I went to the source, like, all right, what do I need to know about this situation? I received, that's okay. She has her way, you have your way. That's totally fine. If you want her to go ahead and just handle it herself, that's totally fine too. But what does it feel like to feel that? It kind of don't feel good, actually. It's like, what would it feel like to let go of your way and just be present and support her way? Like, that actually kind of feels light. Feels good. It's like, okay. So what if you said to her, hey, baby, how would you like to do it? Well, I'll support that. It's like, okay, I'll try that. So I said that to her, and she's like, oh, who is this? Surprise, surprise. What a welcome change, right? I upgraded. Now, we have a lot of coding going on like that is attached to the way we see and do things, and we identify with it. So it's not just one app. It's several lines of code that each time we feel that resistance, each time we feel that separation, the threat, the attack, we can beckon the source of the code, ask for that assistance, direction, expand our awareness, close that app out, and select a higher quality line of code, higher quality app, higher quality thinking, and it transforms our experience. So, when it comes to Black history, what's great is there are so many things in the coding of our history that we can look at and bring that presence to and beckon that wonderful higher level of consciousness to assist us in seeing how the tentacles of that lower consciousness are still playing out. Just like the work you do with your inner child or your own wonderful childhood or upbringing, and you find those places where the blocks are, the traumas are. It's the same with history. I've been blessed to find this newfound appreciation for what I'd been given so long ago. It's led me back to Morehouse College. I'm finishing up a degree there now. It's led me back to looking at the socioeconomic and political ways of the past we have forgotten about our human family. It's led me back to understanding that we must start in our own backyard by asking, what is mine to do? And listening for that and following the breadcrumbs and watching how things unfold to place us in the perfect place at the perfect time. To have us come up and share when the guitar string breaks. The perfect place at the perfect time. To be that light in ways that we don't even expect. But we find out this is why you have lived the life you've lived. This is why you have experienced the things you've experienced. preparing you for right now. And when you upgrade and listen, you begin to bring that oneness into fruition in ways that may blow your mind. Let's just put it that way. So, last thing I want to share. Love to invite you to our workshop after the service, to go into a deeper dive of looking at Black history, just as one way. It's not that you have to look at Black history or any history, right? It's just an opportunity, like going to a movie. What am I going to experience in this movie, right? And to see the patterns, to see the lessons, to see the awakenings, the reflections and the connections. That's what the workshop is about, and also bringing our presence to shift our collective consciousness away from the separation narrative into the integration narrative. And for those who can't make it but would like to go deeper with us, join us online. We have a wonderful 3-week journey on demand called Aligned Relationships. Only love can do that. As Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, and I'll paraphrase, hatred cannot drive out hatred. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only love can do that. Thank you.
I hope you got something out of today's service. We intend to bring you things that will help you in your life become more of who you want to be, give you the freedom of forgiveness and the hope of expectancy that your life will unfold in a way that brings you joy, happiness, and is a contribution to the world. If you would like to contribute to this ministry, please go to unitytriangle.org, hit the donate button, and it will lead you into an easy way of doing that. We thank you for your attention and look forward to seeing you again here.